Okay, so I think this time I'll probably wind up talking about hair or just drawing and demoing hair. Um, so, kind of important thing about me is that whenever well, not about me, but an important thing about drawing hair is always have some sort of head structure underneath. Hair is kind of one of the last things I ever add to a character. So, I mean, if you're going to draw something, if you're going to draw a body, and hair, and like if you're going to draw more than just a head, if you're going to do, head and shoulders and all those other things, then, by all means, put those in now at the start of the pose. Just because I find that once you draw the hair in, it covers things up, and just simply the act of having things covered up tends to restrict you in some ways. Alright, so I mean, even before I draw hair, a lot of times, sorry, dropping things, I tend to focus a lot on heads and shoulders. And usually, head and shoulder just consists of, ovals. And, I tend to pull up one shoulder while dropping the other. These are a lot of kind of poses you can do when you're just, playing around with just heads and shoulders. So it's kind of funny is that I said I'd talk about hair, and here I am drawing heads and shoulders. And, I'm not really worrying too much about, obviously I'm not worrying too much about perspective. I'm trying to get some kind of, overall perspective. Just trying to get a composition. And by composition, I mean I just want to kind of figure out where everything is, and I need some sort of mental image, so something to start from, starting point. And all of these are, to me, kind of the firm basis for drawing hair. The reason for this is because, here, let's check this out. If I draw a head and, here, in fact, I could even draw like a tabletop, right? If you can call that a tabletop, it's really just a line here. Okay, I'll turn it into an actual tabletop. Then I can say, let's put the head, low to the tabletop, or even, I can even say rest the chin on the tabletop. All right. I just woke up, so obviously you're seeing me in the process of getting warmed up. So my first few drawings are going to be kind of lame, but I draw them anyway. I just fine. Get up first thing in the morning, draw. Just that's the way it is. So this head is way low to the table. So if we break this down, okay, we draw the tabletop. Fine, I put the chin here. You see that this is my chin placeholder, kind of funny. And I'm just going, landing the head, straight like that. The shoulder's going to be down here. There's no room on the table for the shoulders to even show up, really. I don't know even if there's any way you could really do it without breaking some necks. So I'm not going to I'm not even going to bother with the shoulders. What I could do though is I can draw the hands. Right? You can put the hands on the table. And even then, my representation of hands is not, a representation of hands like this, where it's like thumb and sorry, it's not necessarily a thumb and, 4 fingers. God, you can really tell I just woke up, right? I don't have to draw hands that have all the features that we would symbolically associate with having hands. To me, it's good enough to do something like this, to draw something where I could even just draw, division like that for the index finger. And people will say, no, don't draw a hand. Like, don't draw hooves, draw hands. You know, don't draw stumps. You know, draw. You know, just tell them to go away. You know, they're not important. You know, the thing is that when you're dealing with just simple poses and you don't know where everything goes, there is something called an anatomical shorthand. I call it an anatomical shorthand. And if I can already kind of sense, you know, that this if I can sense that this anatomical shorthand is, you know, in reality, right? If I can sense that that is, you know, notice, right? It's like, you know, I'm going to redraw it. I still go through the same anatomical shorthand, even though I intend to be more detailed. You know, I'm still going to go through this stage where it is an anatomical shorthand, just because, you know, it's so much more, you know, suggestive. And I can make a, you know, a more right, you know, it's like it's not necessary to be to go maxi detail on everything, and especially not for your first rough drawing when there is nothing but dead blank space. You know, just don't worry about it. Just draw the shorthand, and you know, for all the other people who are saying, you know, don't draw, you know, draw hands, not stumps, draw feet, not stumps. These people are like the kind of clients that you get who hover over your shoulder and they say, it's not going to look like that, is it? You know, and they can just go away. You know, that's why I don't work as an artist anymore, because I just got tired of dealing with those people. All right, so I mean, I can continue going at this hand and just, you know, gradually elaborating it and making it look more real. But like I say, the more you do that, the more, the more detail you throw in, the less that other people can imagine. You know, I guess there is kind of, you want to strike that balance. You know, you want to strike a balance, and it's up to you to find where that balance is, because it's like when you're on a tightrope, right? You're balancing. Okay, there is no kind of textbook rule for how far to the left or how far to the right, and nobody staring at you on the tightrope is going to be able to tell you that, because you got to be feeling it yourself, right? And so you find the balance. You have to just use your experience and figure out when you've overdrawn and killed something off versus when you've made something that it was too loose to the point where no one could understand it. And sometimes the case is just that some people just are dense and won't understand unless you tell them everything, and they need to be led along. And that's okay, you know, not judging them. It's all right. It's all right. It's okay. You know, you can just get yourself, you know, a juice pack and, you know, Capri Sun juice box, and, you know, maybe a snack from the, you know, from the fridge. That's okay. You know, it's all right. I'm not judging you. It's okay. Your mommy will come along to pick you up soon. Okay, so they're the same thing. You know, what I've done is, you know, the elaborate hand versus the simplified shorthand hand. To me, mentally, they're the same, because I can see all the same details and I know what's going on. So I don't feel it's necessary to go in and elaborate on it and change it from a hoof into a hand. Just right. So anyway, man, got sidetracked, and we still want to talk about hair eventually. Okay, so just getting this initial setup of the head and hands on the table, you know, now I can figure out where I want the hair to go, right? It's like sometimes I want to figure out where the hair originates, right? Sometimes I want to have kind of an origination point here. And, you know, sometimes you can have the hair, in this case, I'm going for fairly lank hair, you know. The hair is not like comic book hair where it goes like Aerith Gainsborough, or, you know, I'm not doing this, you know. You could if you wanted to, but I think it seems kind of strange. I like hair that, you know, if you can do hair any way you please. Okay, it's all right. I'm not judging you. Just do whatever you want. It's okay. You know, everyone's different. So there we go. And again, I'm not going to say that you have to have, you know, really, it doesn't even have to register as hair yet. You don't have to draw in every fiber. Not necessary, even though, you know, in real life you can see it. What is kind of important is that, you know, the form is readable, right? So in this case, you know, most of the hair here is probably going to be falling, you know, straight off the table, right? We can have the ear here. And the reason why I put the ear there is so that the hair can hook, you know, we can hook the hair off the ear like that, right? We can do that. And then some of the hair, if it's short hair, will go straight up. You know, some of it will do that. And then, of course, there's the sideburn, you know, the sideburn region. And you can have, you know, non-existent sideburns. You can have, you know, short tufts. Okay. And to me, like a piece of hair is not complete without one versus the other, right? And one thing I'm not doing is is that usually one side will be more pronounced than the other. Maybe I could even say that there are 3 parts of the hair. You know, this would be a kind of a middle spine. So if I do something like that, right, if I put like a middle spine to the hair, okay, what I'm not doing is this. Right? I'm not doing this sausage thing. I'm not making link sausages. What I'll do is I'll take the same curve and I'll accentuate, right? You can do that. And it's not just the same curve accentuated like this. I guess you could. But usually there's a bias to one end, right? There's a bias. Or the bias can be up here. And then the same can be, you know, this can cross over. You know, the bias can be similar. You know, I can share the bias on that. Or if I want, I can make it so it gets narrower and then it gets thicker here. Right, they're all just hair shapes. So just ways to, you know, this is the alternative to the link sausages thing. Okay, more heads and shoulders. Let's do like a what does this pose say? You know, the moment you touch a shoulder to a chin, you know, and then you get this pose. You get the or maybe it's you get that pose. Okay, so now that we've set this pose up, and you know, head, shoulder, I'll probably get a hand in there. Okay, so again, there's that. I drew a rather large hand. I don't care. I'm going to keep it. All right. So with these 3 things, right, now I can begin finding flows and relationships between objects. Right. There's one. It's between the top of the head here and the hand over here. Look at all that distance there, right? So I'm covering all that distance, and this to me is what makes, you know, for a strong kind of hair pose is You know, when you can make close relationships between things, and you can make distant relationships between things. So, right. So what I do is I make these very distant relationships first thing. Those are the first things I draw, and then I start, you know, putting in the closer relationships. So the closer relationship would be, you know, between here and here, right? I can just throw in one hair curl. It looks. Now, another thing is that whenever I'm putting in the bangs of hair, you know, I can do one of several things. I can go with all even bangs of hair, or, you know, bangs of decreasing size. So maybe I'll change that one from a curl back into just a regular bang, right? So these are bangs of, you know, this is slightly smaller, this is larger, this one's like largest, right? So there's a kind of a series that's going on. Or what I could do is I can, let me undo that, roll all that back. Right. I can do this. I can go for the large one, and then a small one, and a large, right? So I can alternate. Right. So I like alternation as well. Or, you know, I guess, well, those are the two that I use the most. What I don't do is just go, you know, and just kind of randomly. I don't do that, right? You can vary things a bit, right? There's another variation. So it doesn't have to be, you know, large banana-like chunks of hair either, right? You can, and this is why I think it's important to look at a variety of art styles, or at least, you know, if you're going to read manga, fine, read a lot of different mangas by different artists, and you'll see that they have many different ways of approaching hair, you know, and look at these before, you know, kind of inventing your own, and then you can begin combining them. Right, and do look at you know, do look at like fashion photos as well. If you're looking for something new, and start looking at fashion photos. But quite frankly, I I actually do like a lot of the anime hairstyles, even though they're ridiculous and they're not possible. I guess that that's where it becomes artistic license, and I guess hair is probably one of those few things that that the realism police haven't begun clamping down on yet. Right. So now that I've drawn all that really simple hair in, you know, the next step is just kind of carving and adding more lines which show the flow of the hair. And these aren't just lines that come from nowhere. If anything, this is very similar to how I handled wood grain. There was like I have one video which is about making detail, and I take this wooden chest and I add wood grain all over it. This is exactly the same algorithm. This is just the wood grain algorithm. You know, you draw one shape, all right, or I can draw any shape like this, and then I can find a flow over it, right? And the line divisions aren't always even, right? Sometimes I tend to make some of the line divisions really close. Sometimes I space them widely, right? I vary the spacing. You can alternate if you want as well. But usually if I put one line down, that line will either stay all by itself, or I'll put another very close neighboring line right? And then the other thing you can do is that, if you do put a line down, it's usually not dead smack center. It's usually maybe about 2/3 off to one side. And then there's another one which is maybe 2/3 off to one side as well. This helps kind of round it out and makes it feel like the surface, if I start gridding this off, right? The surface, if I start putting thumbtacks, inverted thumbtacks on this, you'll see how the thumbtacks kind of, this one points outward. This one is, pointing straight at us. This one over here is, right, pointing out that way. So that's why I like doing that kind of line work. Or at the very least, I could say, do 2/3 on one and squish it up to the side. Do 2/3 on the other, and play that along, right? And so now what I get is a twist. Right, so you can feel how this side here is kind of twisting up. This is why I have all those form videos that just talk about different ways, of achieving a twist with 3 lines. So when you're drawing hair, this is why they call them the basics or the fundamentals, because you're just applying them, and it generates these looks, and it makes it really easy, and it's just. But you have to master them to the point where you don't think about them, you just use them unknowingly, unconsciously. That's what it means. It's like you've mastered it when you actually, it's not when you can do it, it's when you don't even think about it and you do it right. Even like, let's see, what else can I do with hair? I can put the hands right here. Okay, so instead of resting the chin against the table like I had earlier, I'll have, let me put the heel of the hand here, and then I'll do the rest of the hand up here. Right? So I do it in 2 parts. You can do that, right? But, I'm not going to spend too much time on that because I still want this overall feeling. And, now I can kind of place the tabletop. In fact, I'll move the tabletop slightly inwards, just that way we have, the arms aren't like right on the edge of the table. I'm going to move them back a bit. So this is where their placement is going to be. Or maybe even before I do that, I can draw in the shoulders. Anyway, this is not an anatomy lesson. This is about drawing hair. Okay. And you'll notice that whenever I draw mouths, what I don't do is I don't do ain't like that. A lot of times the first thing I draw are corners, the corners of the mouth, right? Because, the moment I do that, we can already see. So kind of, to me, the corners of the mouth are really. Yeah, if I'm gonna but sometimes I do like a little bit of wiggle in the lip, and I do them on one side, It's not necessarily, I mean, you can, but yeah, it's up to you, But just letting you know, there's different ways in which you can handle the mouth. And here's the other thing, is that the head like this, maybe it's better if I draw it from the side, but Okay, one thing we can do is we can have the hand and the elbow. You know, it's like I can't get away from drawing these little anatomical diagrams because it's connected. You can't just say I'm going to draw hair and that's it. There's a relationship between the hair and the anatomy and the way the pose works. It's just you. That's why I always draw all these other things rather than just saying let's just draw hair and draw hair floating in the middle of a vacuum. I can't do that, right? So, you know, in this case, when you put the chin on the hands and you apply weight, you know, once the body and torso, once you apply weight on that, right, then, you know, this part here is going to go down. It's going to go down, and the chin is like a lever, right? The chin's this, you've got this fulcrum right here on the neck, and naturally the head is going to tilt upwards, right? That's what happens. And then, you know, the shoulders are mobile, right? I can move the shoulders forward and hunch. Right? So a lot of things are moving around, and they kind of have to settle into place, you know. And it might look awkward. Your first drawing might be a little anatomically broken. It's not a crime to make an anatomically broken drawing. It's just a crime to kind of like ink the whole thing up and say, hey, you know, I'm done. You know, if it's anatomically broken and, you know, you realize this, then just redraw it. Just don't go publishing anatomically broken stuff. Otherwise, you wind up on Escher Girls. Right. So in this case, you know, I'm rocking. I need to rock the head back a bit. Right. So I'm pulling everything down. You know, the ears. Right. When this happens, right, the eye level goes up. The ears are over here. Right. So naturally, everything kind of goes up like that. That's kind of funny. It's like a lot of people say, it's like, hey, you know, you did this landscape lesson, it turned into a geology lesson. You know, it's like you do this hair lesson, it becomes this kind of anatomical inverse kinematics kinesiology lesson. They're all related. You need to know them. This is what makes a good artist. It's not he's good at drawing hair because he's good at drawing hair. You get good at drawing hair because you can interlink it with other branches of knowledge that are necessary to get the thing done right. So for all of you who are looking for shortcuts, this is not good news. But if you really want to kind of set yourself apart from, you know, other mediocre artists who are just good at drawing hair and nothing else, they can't interlink other things, now you kind of know why. You know, this is what they're missing. It's not magical talent. It's just about having a complete knowledge. Right. So in this case, I can, you know, rock the head back. But, you know, maybe I can. Let's try one where the head actually is forward, right? Can we move the head forward? I don't know. I have to experiment. Find an empty part of your page. This is why I work on such large canvases, because a lot of times if I'm working on a new pose, you know, I'll do it from the side, then I'll do it from the front. These are what I call preparatory drawings. The preparatory drawings are mental preparation, so you understand what the character is doing before you actually draw it. So I'm rocking the head forward now. All right. And I'll put the head on the chin. Ah. So what does this allow us to do? Well, for one thing, the person now has to essentially get out of their seat to do this. So they get out of their seat, they keep their head on their hands. This is a very nice kind of condescending pose. Not cute at all. But I like the fact that, you know, you need to be able to convey condescension sometimes. Sometimes you need to have that, you know, that leering over look. Not everything has to be kawaii. And sometimes it's kind of interesting in that you can take a cute character and then do that sort of shift, you know, where suddenly they've assumed something very threatening. They've assumed a threatening pose. You know, that I find helps your characters seem a little less, two-dimensional. Right? So I can have, I don't know, some target that's kind of sitting off screen over here in the corner. Right? They can be looking down. Or maybe what I can do is I can looking straight, or maybe so how much of the pupil is exposed? Right? All sorts of different things you can do with the eye. Okay, so I haven't drawn any hair. Let's draw some hair on some of these. So let's say we're behind a character here. So, things I can do with the hair is I can make the hair go straight down. And you won't see much, right? That's fine. But I guess some of this hair, I can part it, and then I can use the back of the person as like this tabletop for the hair to play off of. Plus there's a neck there, right? So I'm parting the hair around the neck. I can make it flow around the body. Right? There's the shoulder with the trapezius right there. So the hair can flow. And the flow doesn't always have to wind up going tangential to that surface, right? Because it's going behind something, you're better off actually just cutting the line, just cut straight off. And then on the top of the head, there's the crown, there's the seam of the hair, right? So there's the parting of the hair. So always get that distant relationship going, get the long distance relationship going, and link them. Don't just have your hair, don't tunnel vision in like this and then just deal with hair like that. That happens later. But when you're in your kind of starting, when you're in your starting stages of the drawing, zoom out. As for what to do when you're at the top, right, where the hair kind of meets here, right, you've got this, this is where oftentimes I can do several things. I can make little things stick up. And it doesn't have to be one, right? It can be many different shapes. A lot of times they have very iconic characters that will have something sticking up. I can also stick, well, here, let me zoom out, because this is the other thing, because I'm planning on doing a large stroke, because I'll zoom out for the large stroke, right? I can do that. Right, so you can have a hair element that hooks. You can have more than one as well. Right? All different things you can do at the top of the head. You can pull it all up into a little kind of bun. Or maybe you can go into a bun with an elastic and then have something that's kind of cut off into Right, so now I've cut it off into this kind of a brush, paintbrush. And then what do you do at the end, right? So you can. If you want to show that it's been like cut and kind of chopped all at the same length, like the person just had a fresh haircut, then the way that you handle the ends is going to be kind of important. So to me, fresh cut hair tends that it has a termination line. You know, I terminate the hair like this, right? There's usually a squared off edge to it. All right. Whereas if the hair's been allowed to grow out, or kind of a more rough and unkempt look, that's what I have at the end, right? More of the triangular end. Well, you can really do any end you want on the hair. You know, you can even cross over if you want, you know, kind of a stylized look. No, like, there are many workable solutions you can use, and you'll just have to make them up on your own. There's no list for it. Or if there is a list, it's really too large to mention. And I just say read a lot of comics, read a lot of manga, and find them all. You know, find as many as you can, and maybe you can come up with some. But you know, don't limit yourself to just one or two or three, you know, ways of handling the edge of the hair. Find many. Find many. Now, so far I've only done kind of long, lank, you know, flowy hair. You know, I mean, hair can not necessarily to draw the entire mouth either, you know. You notice that I don't, a lot of times I even draw my characters without lips. I don't, you know, I don't feel it's necessary to go, you know, draw. I don't know why. Just after a while, drawing all the lips kind of seems like a blow-up doll. So I usually don't bother drawing lips, you know. Not necessary that all characters have red lipstick. In fact, I kind of like, you know, the non-lipstick look. Okay, so things we can do with hair. Well, this is one thing you can do. If you want to show a lot of the character's neck, you know, and you want them to kind of have this sprightly look, these are all female haircuts. You know, this is kind of this, there's this thing where I'm always sweeping the hair out like that. You know, you can go uneven as well. So I can, let's draw some like this. So short on one side, a lot longer on the other. All right. So I guess this is kind of where I think things get a little ridiculous. But you know, it's viable if you got some kind of superhero with crazy hair. Well, by all means, go ahead. You can do asymmetrical hairstyles. Let me think. And yeah, you know, don't worry about like making the hair perfect on. You know, you're gonna have a few lines that kind of go the wrong way. Whatever, just keep drawing and draw over them, and eventually the lines will deprecate. They'll become less and less important as you add more and more lines. You know, to the point where the wrong line is just one more line amongst many other correct lines. you can choose to put in hair features. I don't know, I call them features, where you take one hair and you add these bug-like antennas. Oh, very angsty, right? Man, that must itch like crazy, right? So that's the other thing, is that when you start doing stuff like that, you got to consider the comfort of the hairstyle, right? I find that whenever there's a lot of if you have a lot of hair that's kind of going in there and poking, it's going to be itchy. You're going to feel itchy just looking at it. And I'm not saying no, don't do it. I'm just saying it's going to be an itchy hairstyle, and it's going to generate this kind of subconscious feeling of itch. And maybe it works well when a character is like, really harried and bothered, and they're always brushing their hair out of their face. So it's a means of communication. And yes, hair can totally, you can go for the shaggy dog, right? So usually, to me, there's like hair kind of appears in parts. There's usually there's this large frontal bang area, and then there's areas at the side, and then there's the part at the back, plus whatever things you add on top, any kind of buns or ponytails or pigtails, right? Usually if you're going to add a bun or a pigtail or ponytail, these things, when they get tied off, they wind up being very close to the skull. So I can't just sort of add pigtails right now, because the hair is already very voluminous in this area. So I guess if you're gonna add like pigtails and buns and that sort of things, maybe good to add them early on, and that way you can sculpt the hair around them. Yeah, and plus whenever there's a any kind of these kinds of features where the hair is pulled up, then there's going to be no hair in those areas. So you're gonna you wind up having all the other surrounding hair. It all gets pulled up. And maybe there is some leftover hair that winds up left behind like this. But all the other hair, that was here and here, right? This has all gone up into there, right? So I guess that is just maybe one more reason why you would draw the pigtails and the buns or any kind of tied up hair. Draw the tied up hair first, rather than adding it on later and then suddenly realizing we have an excessive hair. I'm just trying to think about what to do with that middle part. I'm not going to deal with it yet. I'm going to... Alright, so I've chosen to go and square off all of the ends of the hair. And I find that this, it generates a very voluminous looking hair. Because I can mentally pick out a lot of these volumes. Right? That's what I'm picking out mentally. So, I can show you just, it does start with simple curves. You kind of have to know how they're flowing over the head. Then the rest of this, there's no creativity involved at all at this point. All the creativity part is done. Now I am simply elaborating on what is already there in my mind. The creation all happens in the rough sketch. At this point, I'm just clarifying. Right, so actually I could probably just, yeah, hair accessories, my goodness. You can start considering what kind of things that she's going to stick in her hair. Generally, the more things you stick into the hair, I think the more girly the character kind of gets. Which is why guys almost never have things stuck in their hair. You can make a different kind of character, just as long as you know what you're doing. Nothing wrong with it. Right. So sometimes just doing one, like just doing large curves as well and just ad-libbing it. I guess you'd call it an advanced technique. Right. It's just, again, you can do this when you can do this. Like after you do this, right? It's like this is something that you gradually work yourself up to. I'm only able to do this now. The reason I didn't do this at the beginning is because I just wasn't warmed up. I wasn't feeling. It's been a while since I drew all these hairstyles, and now I feel fairly warmed up, and I can begin doing this. All right, so it's like it starts out as just a simple shape, right? But then a third line is added like that, and it gives it volume. I can continue this line, right? And there now the form is complete. I can, if you can go around and you can grid the whole thing up like this, this is sort of the way of checking. Why do you think I always hassling people? Draw your cubes, draw your cubes, draw your cubes. This is why. It's so you can go all freeform and, with just a few lines, do this sort of thing. And not just hair. I shouldn't just draw heads from the front. Let's draw them from the side. I think maybe this is probably one of the main reasons I like anime drawn heads so much. It's not so much the eyes, which everyone goes crazy about. It's really the hair that interests me the most, because there's just so much more variety with the hair. The eyes, I mean, they don't always have to be huge. They can be really small. Looks kind of funny though. It's kind of expected to have large eyes. But yeah, I mean, they don't have to be like massive eyes. It's kind of funny though. You try to draw, regular sized eyes, and she looks like a mole. But I don't know. Not judging. And I guess the other thing is that this is why I don't draw eyes right away. A lot of times I kind of do this setup stuff where I'm drawing, the cheekbone structure. I draw the eyebrow, and the nose and the mouth and all these other things before I even draw the eye. And then I just draw what comes natural. I draw it the size that just feels right. Just too many bloodthirsty people want to draw manga. They're always go for the eyes, go for the eyes. Hey, so bloodthirsty. And it's also not necessary to go in and draw, the whole 9 yards, shoujo style eye where it's like, and the only reason why I can kind of come down on this style is because I can do it, because I tried it and I did it. That's when you're allowed to judge. When you're able to do it and do it fairly well. Then you can say, well, I've done it. I've compared to these other ways of doing it, and I like this one. I like this one or I don't like this one. It's merely personal preference. I'm not saying no, don't draw. It's just personal preference. I don't know. I'm not so crazy about this whole kind of vacuous. It seems vacuous to me anyway. Like, my God, you have like that. One highlight is not enough. You gotta have you need 3 minimum. Maybe I'll add a 4th just because I'm feeling particularly vindictive. Oh no, wait. You need a pie slice highlight. There you go. And then here's the thing that really bothers me the most is when they do eyelashes like this. Or like this. But again, it's a style that just irritates me. Kind of, because it starts to look like a doll's eye, right? This is like the old style of Japanese manga, which has evolved. It's gotten better. We don't have to do this anymore. So, I mean, eyes can be iconic. They can be just like that. And, generally speaking, it's like a lot of times there's this cheek mass area, right? This, how high you pull it up, right? Like, a lot of people don't realize just how much expressiveness can be held in this. Once you do that, you are basically, you're showing like a real squint. Now we have this whole kind of, sneering, right? So where you push the nose, even the nose line goes up with that sneer. Right? So, yeah, this stuff may seem formulaic. Yeah, it's like, it's all boiled down to a few lines, and everyone says, anime's easy. I hate people who draw anime. You don't realize just how much nuance there is in every single line, and the fact is you just cannot draw all the anatomical details that you want. You have to have it in your head. The more that you can have in your head, the less you have to draw on paper. It's not, the skill of an artist is not reflected in how many lines he throws down. It's how much form he's thinking of in his head and doesn't have to draw and is able to just convey that with fewer lines. Samurai do not, their skill is not shown off when they do 1,000 strokes, and they, stop trying to hit me and hit me. They're not Zorro, right? They're all about doing the whole kind of Iedo or EA thing where they like hit the guy in one stroke, and they like kind of size the guy up and they try to just do the bare minimum, no wasted movement. That is what I like, is I like, kind of eliminating, ideally I'd like to eliminate movement, eliminate unnecessary lines, and simplify. You can draw maximalistic if you want, but it's that's my ideal is just drawing maximal as a means of training, and then gradually working my way up to the point where I can be minimalistic, and without losing anything. And that's why I have to go through all these warm-up drawings, before I can start really doing the minimalistic stuff. It doesn't just happen the moment I roll out of bed. Anyway, I guess I'll call that a wrap. It's about an hour.